guys, welcome back to the Friday Vlog, where we discuss activity that goes on here with the BuzWeaver channel. That includes things like current events, headlines that are in the news, pop culture, social media, technology, and items of interest that come up during the week that allow us to have a little bit of a dialogue. Thank you to all of you on BitChute, Rumble, and Odyssey, and all of you here on YouTube for your continued support. It's greatly appreciated.
All right, guys, before we get started, I want to make it perfectly clear that in no way am I trying to dismiss or tamp down what is currently going on in Ukraine. I empathize greatly with what's going on there, nor am I lending any support or credence to Russia in their military operation. I'm simply outlining some articles illustrating the differences between how the media around the world and in the United States was covering Ukraine and how they are covering it now to drive a new narrative and a new direction, and how there is a lot of misinformation and propaganda that is currently happening. So from The Guardian back in 2015, this would have been a year after Crimea was invaded by Russia. This is still under the Obama administration. Welcome to Ukraine, the most corrupt nation in Europe. Now, I won't go into all the details of this particular article. While the conflict with Russia heats up in the east, life for most Ukrainians is marred by corruption so endemic that even hospitals appear to be infected. Can anyone clean the country up? So that was just kind of one of the details there, kind of, pointing towards what's going on there. And then, of course, we have here in New Europe, Ukrainian president's rule becomes increasingly corrupt, authoritarian, they say here. So it has recently become clear that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy loves kleptocracy as much as his predecessor. So here we have, you don't hear kleptocracy very often, but nonetheless, you can see that they're going after Zelenskyy here in this particular article. And then from Vox here in the United States, that would be a Ukrainian comedian turned president is embroiled in Trump's impeachment mess. Oh my goodness. At the center of the latest scandal threatening to take down President Donald Trump is a comedian who just became president of his country 4 months ago. Now, don't you find it interesting, the wording here? Because this is what we always talk about. The carrot on the stick that the left uses, that the media uses to keep the Trump detractors going, that at any moment, President Trump was going to go down. So you can see it down. So threatening to take down President Trump. So there you have it. There's a continuing language that was going on during that time, as I mentioned even yesterday, the carrot on the stick that they continue to pursue President Trump with. Now, the curious thing about it is that President Trump was made aware of this particular viral video that was going around. And so based upon this video, Trump decided, hey, let me just make a phone call to Zelenskyy and see, what in the world is going on. And here it is, basically.
We're walking out to the press conference, I said, no, I'm not going to, we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money.
There's your quid pro quo right there on video for everyone to see. Now, this also gets kind of depressed and pushed down in searches and other criteria, particularly on Twitter, but it's still around. Twitter hasn't taken it down. So here you have it, an illegal quid pro quo, excuse me, by a vice president right here for everyone to see. And this is basically what President Trump was calling Zelenskyy about, was what can you tell me about this? What can you tell me about this prosecutor? What can you tell me about these particular events? So it's quite interesting how the narrative changes, and not to mention the fact that we've just discovered this week, as I covered in a video, that the New York Times finally came out and admitted that the obvious, of course, that Hunter Biden's laptop was real, which is interesting because it was suppressed. It was toned down. And we know that it was done so because the campaign was going on for Joe Biden. And it could be yet another example of voter interference on the part of the establishment to make sure that their surrogate president, Joe Biden, was going to make it into office. And here we have from Gender Z, and this is the CEO here, is a founder. It's an NGO or non-government organization talking about the issues there in Ukraine. Hate crimes against LGBT people in Ukraine. The attacks have become more and more organized. Now, I was trying to find a date on here to see when this article came out, but I was not able to locate one. But suffice it to say, there was other articles pertaining to this very same topic, that there was a growing concern, growing aggression and hostility towards the LGBT there, because Ukraine is a very nationalist country. It is essentially very nationalist there. They're very pro government there and so forth, as we just basically mentioned here when it comes to kleptocracy. And then here we have from the Atlantic Council, Ukrainians' deadly profession. 3 journalists attacked in July. So I won't be able to mention specific wording here, but as you can see here, this particular journalist was harmed in Kiev. He was a host of a morning show at Radio Vesti, and then he was involved in an automobile incident there in Ukraine. So they were going after journalists, which is obviously a big concern, and of course why it made it into the spectrum of the media headlines. And this was from July 27th of 2016. All right, guys, so I had to do a little bit of an edit there because of the language here. And, of course, this is primarily on YouTube for the Friday vlog. So I have to be cognizant of what is said. And I just wanted to triple check and make sure that I can say what I want to say here. From Reuters, commentary, Ukraine's neo-problem. As Ukraine's struggle against Russia and its proxies continues, Kiev must also contend with a growing problem behind the front lines, far-right vigilantes who are willing to use intimidation and even violence to advance their agendas, and who often do so with this tacit approval of law enforcement agencies. So, again, with part of that nationalism growing, the police and other organizations there in Ukraine, of course, allow this organization to prosper or continue and to galvanize. And they're a very large group there. As a matter of fact, around the world right now, these sorts of individuals, right-wing and nationalists and so forth and so on, as I can't particularly mention, are now joining up with these groups there in Ukraine. And so it's interesting because Facebook facilitated this. Facebook allows praise of this group, Ukraine Battalion, if it fights Russian invasion. And of course, we are very aware, and these are their flags and symbols, as you can see here, so you often see that. You don't see it covered in the media that often because they don't want to, give it any kind of leverage or direction. But as you can see here, they have their symbols and so forth. And as we also talked about here on the channel, Facebook allows war posts urging violence against Russian invaders, which is very interesting. So you have the acceptance of this particular group, which is normally not accepted across any social media, but now is because of the current situation, and as we're covering here, to show the distinctions between what is acceptable and not acceptable on one day, and then acceptable and not acceptable on the next day. So it's a constant flip-flop, and this is the problem with the way they do their censorship on social media, because it's just a matter of them just making up the rules as they go along. They just institute it whenever they want, go after whomever they want, and it's a very distinctive, targeted process that they engage in. So it's not fairly used, and people can see it, but it continues because it just is. So just as a reminder, if you guys do want that kind of comparison and contrast, the differences between the media in the West and the media perhaps coming out of Russia, you can go on Odyssey, as well as follow me there on Odyssey, which is a nice little plug. But you can go there and follow RT there, and you can see the contrast between what the West is saying and what Russia is saying. You can also find them on Rumble. So you can go on there and also give me a follow there as well. And so basically that's what I have for you guys on this Friday. So if you want to see the opposite side of what we all just covered, then of course you can go to Rumble and or Odyssey. And that's what I have for you guys on this Friday.
All right, guys, so that's going to wrap it up for this Friday vlog. Thank you for the likes, the shares, and the comments, to include those on BitChute, Rumble, and Odyssey, as well as here on YouTube. Thank you, guys, all of you, for your continued support. Below this video, you can find the various social media links that I belong to, where you can see my daily post. And of course, if you are watching this here on YouTube, that would be the channel icon appearing right there on the screen. To subscribe, you can click on that to obviously subscribe, as well as select notifications. That way you'll know when there's content here on the channel. And I'll see all of you guys right there behind that camera next week.